The Osmo Pocket 3 has been out for 6 months, and finally it's back in stock in most places, no longer in that backorder status, and it's selling like hotcakes. The big question is it a camera that's worth investing in now that it's been out on the market for 6 months and we know how it performs in real-world applications? Many times after the hype has died down around a camera, we see its true colors and where its limitations lie. I have pushed the Pocket 3 to its limits in all different filming applications and lighting environments. People will always have their opinions on what is good and what is not so good about this camera. But when it's all said and done, I have used the Osmo Pocket 3 as a high crane shot camera in dynamic framing mode for hard to reach shots. Use it as a hyperlapse camera in an uncontrolled lighting environment, as a time-lapse camera, and for some motion lapses. I've used it to get some piano tracking shots indoors while it was attached to a boom pole, as a studio headshot camera, as a travel camera. I've gotten low light shots with it, bright sunlight shots, cinematic shots in 4K 24, slow motion shots in 1080 240 and 4K 120. I've vlogged with it, put it on a table dolly for some linear shots. I've done some green screen work with it, shot in D-Log M, HLG, and the normal color profile. I've used it for photography, got some sweet panoramic shots with it. Used the Mimo app quite a bit when I needed it. I've calculated the media storage file sizes. I put it through multiple tests, including getting its temperature over different periods of time. I tested its native audio in ambient environments, its dynamic range, its sharpness, and threw some ND filters on it to see how different the color science would be compared to when you're not using ND filters. I have versed it against the iPhone 15 Pro, the Sony ZV-E10, the Sony ZV-1, the GoPro Hero 12, and the Osmo Pocket 2. I even made 2 comprehensive courses on the Osmo Pocket 3 spanning over 2.5 hours in length, covering a lot of the stuff that I just showed you. So I've got a good amount of experience with the Pocket 3, and I'm excited to share with you what I like, what I don't like, and what I love today on the Film Alliance. So far after owning it, I haven't experienced too many limitations with it. It hasn't dropped any frames on me or produced any corrupt files. It's never overheated on me. It hasn't gotten too hot over a longer period of time. It's never shut down on me for any reason. So overall, it's a very reliable camera. I will link all of the accessories that I use in this video for the Pocket 3 in the description in case you're interested. Also, I go into way more detail in that course that I made on the Osmo Pocket 3 on all of this stuff. So this video is more of just touching the surface and generalizing all of the information that I have gathered, researched, and experienced with the Pocket 3. Recently, I discovered something cool that I haven't heard other people talk about. If you own USB-C headphones, you can hook it up to the bottom of the Pocket 3, and then you'll be able to monitor your audio on the display without hooking up the DJI Mic 2. Also, you can play back your videos and listen to it so you can have a better audio experience and make sure nothing was peaking. But it's reasons like that I love the Pocket 3 so much. I know a lot of people are nervous about its delicate nature, and I've dropped it a few times, but it hasn't broken on me yet. The couple of times that I have dropped it, it's been about from waist height. One was on a carpeted surface like in here, and the other time I was doing a piano tracking shot. I didn't clamp down the Pocket 3 hard enough and it fell out, so that one got me scared, but so far, so good. After purchasing the Osmo Pocket 1 5 years ago and using that display for quite a long time, and then renting the Osmo Pocket 2 while I was filming the Osmo Pocket 2 versus the Osmo Pocket 3, I realized really quickly how nice this bigger display is. Not only is it nice, but it flips horizontal like this. Not only the fact that there's more landscape for you to monitor your footage, but also it's a lot more sensitive and it gets a lot brighter. However, it's not up to par with something like an iPhone, which is super sensitive to your touchscreen when you're swiping. A lot of times I've had to swipe before the Osmo Pocket 3 finally registers what I'm trying to do. So I always bring a camera cloth along with me, make sure that it's wiped down really well, profile to enhance that touch sensitivity. That seems to be a good workaround. And maybe something to look forward to on the Osmo Pocket 4, better touch sensitivity. The form factor has been really nice for me. It's a lot easier to hold than a big form factor camera, especially for conspicuous shooting, mainly because you only need one hand and you can hold it vertical while it still shoots horizontal. It's crazy that such a small little camera can produce such a high quality video, but it can. It shoots a native vertical orientation, but this does downgrade to 3K. However, if you turn the Osmo Pocket on its side like this, and then you turn it on, it will automatically orient into a 4K 24 vertical shot, and you can look at it sideways. One of my favorite ways to use the Osmo Pocket 3 is to get some of those hard to reach shots and things that I would never be able to do with a bigger camera like the Sony a6700 or the Sony a7S III. For example, I put together an extension pole rig with a boom pole that I use as my studio mic, and I attached some things to it to not only be able to see the display of the Pocket 3 from the Mimo app, but also to be able to extend the Osmo Pocket 3 about 12 to 16 feet in the air, depending on how tall you are. I'll leave all the accessories that I used for this shot in the description in case you want to build something similar, but it really does help you get some amazing shots. The boom pole trick is not only good for high shots where you're sort of mimicking a drone shot, but it's also good when you go over ledges like this shot right here. I was able to achieve this shot from 8 stories up, looking down, using this boom pole trick. And then while I was there, I also used this pole to get some cool looking spinning shots as I descended the stairs, which made for a pretty cool effect. I've used the spin shot intelligent mode, but that will only spin your camera 90 to 180 degrees. So if you wanted to do a full 360 degree spin, you would have to do it with your own hands and try to be as smooth as possible. But when you do shots like this and you use accessories like that on the Pocket 3, you really can make your videos more cinematic, things that you may see in a movie. I've used the Pocket 3 as a hyperlapse camera, and when you do hyperlapse correctly, it really makes for a great effect in your edits. There's a couple of different ways to do hyperlapse videos. You can either use the actual hyperlapse mode inside of the Pocket 3, or you can use the video mode. I go into way more detail on how I do my hyperlapse videos and time-lapse videos and motion-lapse videos in the course, and I could make a full video on that topic alone. And although all the lapse modes are pretty easy to use and straightforward, there are some things that you have to do correctly in order to make your time lapses look 100%. But out of all of the cameras that I've ever used, the Pocket 3 is definitely the easiest to use, even if you're a beginner to someone who's got a lot of experience in the game and you want to get some really nice looking time-lapse videos. A cool thing about the Pocket 3 is after it takes your time-lapse videos, it will seam it together and then let you see what it looks like in post-production, or you can transfer that file to your phone, which I have done in the past, to easily be able to add it to whatever you're editing. I've shot in all different types of lighting environments with the Pocket 3, and I'm pretty confident on knowing exactly how to expose this camera to get optimal looking performance in the different lighting environments. I have used ND filters while I've been out in the field shooting with it, but only when it's really bright outside. There is a caveat on when you're using ND filters, when to use them and when not to use them. I don't believe it's good to just throw on ND filters if it's bright outside. I think there's a few thresholds that have to be met before you throw on ND filters, because otherwise ND filters will saturate your image. Your skies are gonna look more blue, your grass will look more green, and your reds will look more red than if you were to not use any filter at all. I'm a proponent of taking your shutter speed higher to a certain point before you throw on an ND filter, so there is that fine line of where you can get your shutter speed to a certain point where it won't look so digital, and then also where you're just gonna have to throw on the ND filter. I also go into great detail about all of this in my course, but that's just a general overview. I've done a lot of great looking slow motion shots in both 1080 240 and 4K 120. 4K 120 definitely looks better than 1080 240, but that 240 frames per second super slow motion looks really good as long as your subject is lit properly. I absolutely believe that you can shoot in 1080 240 and then upscale that to 4K in post-production to get a 4K file. One thing that's cool about the slow motion mode on the Pocket 3 is that when you play it back, it actually plays in slow motion. Whereas if you shoot in 4K 120 on other cameras that you might have, you actually have to slow that down in post-production. So I'm able to look at that slow motion shot right out of the display in the playback mode of the Pocket 3. The same thing goes with 1080 240. It plays back that slow motion so you can see what it actually looks like while you're out in the field, making sure that everything is in focus. I did notice with 1080 240, things tend to be not as fast when it comes to autofocus, or maybe the resolution isn't enough where it doesn't recognize the focus well. So you have to make sure your focus is on point before you press that record button when shooting in 1080-240. The one drawback that I see is that you can't shoot in slow motion while you're in video mode. You actually have to switch the modes over to slow motion, which is one extra step in my workflow. I wish you could do it all from the video mode, but maybe that's something that we will look forward to on the Pocket 4. A big thing to remember when you're shooting in slow motion with the Pocket 3 is making sure your shutter speeds are correct. Just follow the 180-degree shutter rule and you should be good to go. With that being said, I wouldn't use 1080-240 in low light because I've done that and it's pretty noisy. You have to have optimal lighting if you're gonna go 1080-240. I have used the Osmo Pocket 3 as a vlog camera. It has a couple different modes that you could use, including face auto detect and face tracking. But if you use these modes, you're gonna use up more battery. So I prefer to use the follow mode because that gives me more control of where the camera is pointing and it consumes less battery. Because it is a 10-bit camera, it performs very well in low light environments and controlled lighting environments. So I absolutely use this as an overhead camera for my product shots, as long as my subject is lit properly, and I keep my ISO down below 800, usually 400 or below, and my shots look great with very little noise in the shadows. If you are a YouTuber or someone who does overhead product shots, the Osmo Pocket 3 is great for that, mainly due to that image quality. I could really tell the difference when I was versing the Osmo Pocket 3 versus the 8-bit cameras like the ZV-E10, the ZV-1, and the Pocket 2. The Osmo Pocket 3 always outperformed those cameras, especially when we were in controlled lighting environments like this, and I had to crank up the ISO. Another great thing about it being a 10-bit camera is you can do some really good looking green screen work as long as your green screen is evenly lit. Usually I find when I shoot green screens with 8-bit cameras, you can almost see a green hue around the subject that you're green screening, whereas with the 10-bit camera, there's so much more data, so you don't have as much green bleed onto your subject. One of the challenging things that I've run into when I'm shooting with the Pocket 3 when you're out in the field shooting and you're shooting low angle shots is it's very difficult to see the display because it doesn't tilt at all. So that's when I would pull out my phone and use the Mimo app to be able to get those lower angle shots, not only to be able to see the display on my phone, but also make sure that my frame is correct and I wasn't under or overexposed. I've shot extensively with the 3 different color profiles, D-Log-M, HLG, and the normal color profile, and all 3 of them have their benefits and drawbacks. I could make an entire video series on those color profiles using the Pocket 3 on when and when not to use each one of them. But to summarize, I prefer to shoot in D-Log-M so that I can match up my colors with other cameras that I'm shooting in the same vicinity, rather than shooting in the normal color profile where my colors are baked in. That's only if I'm shooting with 2 or 3 cameras. If I'm only shooting with the Pocket 3, the normal color profile is perfect for me 90% of the time. HLG is an option, but that does come with some caveats as well that you have to make sure you know about before you go out and film an entire day with it. Mainly what you plan on exporting your video to and whether that's an HDR monitor or not. I know it's a 9 megapixel camera, but when you expose it correctly, you can get some really good looking stills. I wouldn't scale in any of these shots in post-production. You'll have to make sure that your framing is right because it is only 9 megapixels. But I find that when I'm exposing and getting the light to bounce off my subject in a certain way, I was getting some great shots. My preferred method when it comes to photography with the Pocket 3 is underexposing by 1 full stop, as long as we are not in a super low light environment. I actually did a sharpness test with the Pocket 3 when it comes to photography to see how pixelated the photo gets as I scale in. And as you can see right now, the further I scale in, the more pixelated the image gets, and that's just a testament to that 9 megapixels. That's why I say, make sure you get your frame right and your exposure right before you take your shot, because you're not gonna be able to do much in post-production. But as long as you follow those 2 steps, you'll get some really nice shots. And while I was at it, I also did some panorama shooting, which is super easy to use and was producing great results. I recommend using the panorama mode if you are a real estate shooter and you want to make your spaces look more expansive. Like I said before, the Mimo app is most helpful for me in those hard to reach spots when I can't really see the display. But it also has 2 very important exposure tools that you don't get natively inside of the Osmo Pocket 3. And that is Zebras, also known as Overexposure Alert, and the histogram. These tools make it easier for me to expose my shot to make sure nothing is overexposed. I like to expose for the highlights so I'm able to easily see exactly how the image looks and to adjust it with the exposure settings within the app rather than trying to eye it out on the display of the Pocket 3. If you're interested in the different tests that I did, I'll throw it up on the screen now, but basically I calculated how much shooting time you'll get with a 64GB card when the card is completely empty. And then you can go from there to figure out how much shooting time you'll get with whatever card it is that you have. Like if you have a 128GB card, then just double that amount of time. As far as temperature goes, I recorded in 4K 60 and checked the temperature periodically all the way up until 45 minutes. And interestingly enough, the temperature rose pretty quickly, but then it got to a certain point where it just leveled out. And that's probably why I've never had it overheat on me. I don't know why this is, but I thought that was pretty cool. I also tested out how fast the battery drains in both a studio environment like this, where I just press record and I just let it go, and also when I was out in the field shooting with it, and I got about 3/4 of a day, mainly in 4K 60 without using any of the intelligent auto modes. That's pretty good compared to other cameras that I have used in the past, and it lasts quite a bit longer than what I'm normally used to. You cannot change out the battery on the Pocket 3, but you can attach an extra battery that comes with the Creator Combo Kit, or you can purchase this separately on Amazon and it will fill your battery up about 60%. But the real benefit to the Pocket 3 when you have it hooked up to a USB-C charging port is it charges from 0 to 100% in 21 minutes, which is insane for the amount of time that the battery actually lasts while you're out filming with it. So in 21 minutes, that gives me about 3/4 of a day. I can't think of another battery that I use that gives me that much filming time. The native audio out of the Osmo Pocket 3 is nothing spectacular, but like I said, if you hook up USB-C headphones to the Pocket 3, you'll not only be able to get better audio, but you'll also be able to monitor the audio on the display. This little bar on the top here will tell you if you're peaking or whether or not you're speaking too loud, or maybe you need to pull the mic away from your mouth because you keep on hitting that red, so you're able to actually monitor your audio. I thought that was pretty cool. If you're trying to save some money and you can't buy the Creator Combo Kit or the DJI Mic 2 and you're doing some vlog, just pick up some headphones like this for 20 bucks on Amazon. I've had the Pocket 3 since January of 2024, and even right now, 6 months after it was released, it's still not available at certain camera stores, at least in the Creator Combo Kit variation. Make sure before you purchase the Pocket 3 and go out and shooting an entire day in 10-bit 4K 120 or 4K 60 that your editing rig can handle that footage. I happen to own an iMac Studio, but I know for a fact if I was to edit that footage on my 2019 iMac, it wouldn't be able to handle that footage, and I would have to create proxies for it. Now, creating proxies is not a big deal, and you could do that, but it is an extra step in your workflow and something that you don't want to run into when you go to edit your footage and you weren't expecting that. That's why I cover 1080 shooting, because it's so important for a lot of people who want to shoot in 1080 because that's all their editing rigs can handle. And then they might just upscale it to 4K on the export. But the fact that it can shoot in 4K 120 in 10-bit is pretty astounding for the size and the form factor. You're gonna get way better dynamic range than you would with previous versions of the Osmo Pocket cameras and smaller sensors like on an iPhone. When I bought the Creator Combo Kit, it came with the DJI Mic 2, which gives me great sounding audio, and I recommend anyone who wants to do vlogging where it's gonna be farther than just arm reach away to pick up the Creator Combo Kit, because I do think it's worth the money. Another reason why the Creator Combo Kit is good is because it comes with that extra battery we talked about and a little wide angle lens. Now that wide angle lens does give you a little bit of a fisheye on the outside of the frame, but it still widens out your shots. And I think if you're a real estate shooter, that you must get that little wide angle lens because it'll make your real estate shots look wider. So that's my review on the Pocket 3. I love this camera. I think it's great. I think it's good for beginners. I think it's great for experts, people who want to get BTS, or people who just want to use this as their main A-cam. Whatever it is that you're doing, this Pocket 3 is something that I love. I'll keep it in my camera bag, and I'd love for you to go take my course so that you can learn more about it, because the more that I learn about it, the more that I love it. All right, thanks for watching this video. I'm Joe with the Film Alliance, and until the next one, have a good week.